Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs. Big thanks, as always, to Exterior Home Solution. If you need roofing, siding, windows, or a garage, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. They've been local and trusted since 1999. That phone number for a free estimate is 865-524-5888. You can always see them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Guys, it was a bad weekend for Tennessee on the road at Missouri, 36-7, the final score. We spent the last couple of days recapping that in word form over on the website, volquest.com. But Austin, overall, a couple of days out, you've had time to sit and stew on it. What happened for Tennessee? What was the biggest issue for Tennessee and why that was such a lopsided defeat?
No juice, ineffective in the run game. No adjustments on the defensive side of the ball, or not enough adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. Schrader shredded them, and Cook was cooking. And it just one of those games where I think just everybody felt like OJ on Naked Gun when he goes down the steps, flipping over and over and over again. That's just a bad performance, and I just don't. I mean, how do you flip the light on? You have Georgia coming in. It's easy to go, well, you should be able to get up for this one. They're the number one team in the country. But, I mean, you played so bad. Like, how do you get the momentum flipped back to where you're competitive against a Georgia team that has clearly had their number the last couple of years?
Rob, you look at the defeat, and, of course, Tennessee's defense was not good. But offensively, it was a Tennessee low of 7 points for Josh Heupel, the worst defeat in Josh Heupel's head coaching career. You had 3 turnovers, a couple inside the 50. Tennessee could not run the football. Offensively, it was a nightmare, just like it was defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have probably a lot of different thoughts than anybody else, but I would go back and forth to whether was this more shocking than what happened at South Carolina last year. And I think, with a couple of days to reflect on it, I think this one was, because at least, Tennessee under Josh Heupel has an identity, and that identity is they score points. This offense isn't last year's offense, but they still, I guess my point is 1 year after scoring damn near 50 points a game, you go to Columbia, and you're the highest scoring team in college football. You go to Columbia and you can't hit double digits against Missouri. That really blows my mind when you think about it. And that's why, what Schrader did, what Missouri did to Tennessee's defense, also eye-opening. But, the fact that, I mean, they're sitting there before the last drive of the fourth quarter, they have 42 yards rushing. And that to me was just, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was stunned about a lot of things on Saturday, but the complete lack of, being able to run the ball was stunning. I mean, based off, this isn't the last week of September. We've seen Tennessee run the football against good SEC defenses for, going on 3 months now, and they just got stonewalled. I was taken aback.
The good news, however, is that next year Tennessee doesn't play in Columbia, Missouri, or South Carolina at all. Rob's question just now is a great question. Were you more surprised by last year or this past weekend?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great debate. I've had this debate with a lot of friends who have texted me, and last year's was more damning because of what was on the line, but it was not as thorough. I mean, last year's offense put up nearly 600 yards against South Carolina.
Yeah, and that's my point.
All over the place. I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, it was last year in Columbia, South Carolina was the meltdown of all meltdowns defensively. Okay, I mean, you let a team that couldn't do anything on offense for the previous month just go up and down the field on you. But you went up and down the field on them as well. This one on Saturday was different because you couldn't get off the field on defense, and then you couldn't do anything on the offensive side of the field either. That's the first time in the Josh Heupel era that both sides of the ball were just really, really bad for 60 minutes of football. And that's where it's at. I mean, you look at it, and listen, I know, you can, and I had this question on the board on Monday for discussion. You can talk about stats and this, that, and the other. You didn't, that game was still Tennessee's, it's 22-7 in Tennessee's and Missouri territory, and they're going to be inside the 10 if not for a holding call, right? So you're one possession away. You can be back in it. Defensively, you let them convert 65% of their third downs. So you never helped yourself defensively by getting off the field. And then offensively, I mean, you go on the road in this league against somebody of some decent quality, and Eric, you have nearly 100 yards of penalties and 3 turnovers. I got a news flash for you. You're not going to win the football game. And that's what happened to Tennessee on offense. They didn't give themselves a chance offensively because of all the self-inflicted wounds that they had, and they didn't help themselves defensively because they couldn't get off the field.
And I think it just goes back to something we've said a couple of times already this season. This offense is not explosive enough to kind of hide those warts, to overcome those penalties, to when one phase of your offense is being shut down or being severely limited, Tennessee's not good enough to kind of overcome that. I look back at the 2021 game at Alabama where Tennessee rushed for like 45 yards or whatever. Tennessee was still in that game late in the game until Alabama ran away with it because you had Hendon Hooker and because the passing game was effective and all that. This year there's not that. When nothing is going right, when your offense is being shut down for the most part in the traditional running game, like it was Saturday, and the penalties hurt you, you can't overcome that. Now, Tennessee did a little bit at Alabama when they couldn't run with the tailbacks because Joe Milton was more a factor in the run game. He was not, and again, situational penalties, back it up, all that type of stuff had stuff to do with it. That just wasn't the case on Saturday. It was just a really, really bad football game, but I think one message is clear, Austin, as we heard Monday and really even Saturday night from Josh Heupel. You gotta check the tape. You gotta try to learn from it and apply it, but you gotta move forward. And there's a sense of urgency now, especially with these seniors, because you have 2 games left, one being against the number 1 team in the country, and then Vanderbilt to finish off this regular season and try to end on a high note.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 2 opportunities, and you're right. I asked Jacob Ward about that on Monday. As a senior, and Jacob's not a real talkative guy, but do you feel urgency knowing that you basically got 2 more times inside Neyland Stadium? And he said yes. I mean, if it matters to you at all, this is where you got to kind of pick yourself up by the bootstraps because Georgia's gonna come in here and they're gonna try to run you out of the stadium the same way they ran, Ole Miss out of Sanford Stadium this past weekend, 52-17. Now it's a road game, different environment, but they're gonna come in here, thinking, hey, this is no big deal. We'll ho hum, we'll pound them just like Missouri pounded them, and that's the team that beat Missouri. So Tennessee's gonna have to bring everything they got, shoot all the bullets in the chamber, and see what happens.
Well, the first thing to me they're going to have to do, Rob, is they're going to have to be able to handle some adversity and keep it a 60-minute fight. They've got to quit letting mistakes compound upon themselves if they're going to be in a football game where they're an underdog and nobody gives them a chance to win.
Yeah, and it felt so – I don't know if this is exactly the perfect response, but, it kind of felt like they did deal with adversity on Saturday because – I kept looking at the scoreboard and like, my God, they're still in this game. It doesn't nothing that you had seen for 3 quarters suggested that Tennessee should be alive, and yet they were.
There they were.
Right, there they were. Right, even into the 4th quarter. And so I thought they handled it. I guess, however, maybe not great on Saturday, but they kept themselves in it. Now, Georgia won't let them hang around like that. I mean, if you're sitting there 3 quarters in and you're like, man, Tennessee's not done anything, then they're going to be down, 38-7 instead of 22-7. But, I thought they kept fighting and scratching on a day when, they clearly didn't have it until it just, kind of all snowballed there late in the 3rd quarter.
And to me, Eric, that beckons the question, if you're looking at this thing, you talk about watching tape, flushing it, and move on, is your takeaway from it of, well, we played as bad as we did and still had a chance in the 4th quarter to win, and that's how you look at it? Or do you look at it and go, man, we were really bad from the start and just played really poorly all the way through, and we were really fortunate to have a chance to be in it in the 4th quarter because Missouri couldn't put us away. I mean, I think it's an interesting approach to how you look at this when you self-evaluate it, you self-scout it moving forward. Do you say, hey, there's some major things we need to correct, or some things of, what? We're right there. We're 2 plays away from making this having the football a chance to go down and take the lead late in the 4th quarter.
I mean, I think a little bit of both, but more so than anything, I mean, you got to see. I mean, you got to see all the crap you put out there. I mean, look at it offensively. You did a couple of things early before, as Rob alluded to, it kind of snowballed. Middle of the field, Milton was hitting on the slants. Of course, you had that touchdown to Dante Thornton. You did a couple of things offensively that's like, okay, you got a little momentum here. Defensively, I mean, you lost Schrader from the get-go. I mean, you weren't covering him out of the backfield. You were giving up third down after third down. You had the interception on drive number 1. That was a good play by Jalen McCullough, a good return. I mean, that was a good start. But Tennessee still didn't capitalize off that the way you need to. So I think it's a little bit of both. You can look at it and say, man, for as bad as we were, we're still in this game in the fourth quarter. Or, I mean, you better go with the mindset of, oh, I did that wrong. Oh, that misalignment here, that's why you missed that. Oh, I over-pursued that play. That opened a big old, crease lane that he could cut back and run through. That's kind of the way I would look at it. When looking at the last 2 games of the regular season, Austin, how big of a loss is Dante Thornton? Josh Heupel made the announcement on Monday. He's going to miss the rest of the regular season. They'll see about the bowl game. But a guy that had been absent all year long, starting to turn it around a little bit towards the end of the season, and then unfortunately got hurt on that touchdown reception, which was a really good play by him.
Yeah, I mean, from a production standpoint, it's not a huge loss just based off of what he's done to this point. But quality body, a bigger body that can run, that could potentially separate from a DB, and a guy that had started to kind of get a little bit more momentum, right, since they moved him outside. He was starting to make a play. You're right. He made a phenomenal catch, on that touchdown, his first touchdown of the year. And, I mean, it's a blow, but from a production standpoint, it's not like you're losing a guy who has 7 to 8 catches a game and averages 90 yards receiving and a score, right? I mean, production-wise has not been there, but he had started to kind of pick things up. You're just super thin there. And, Caleb Webb, I thought, played pretty well Saturday. Chaz Nimrod obviously has flashed a few times in previous games. And, Tennessee's going to have to figure out a way with Squirrel White and Ramel Keaton and then the 2 sophomores or 2, redshirt freshmen to, continue to have some semblance of a passing game. And then do they work in D. Williams? Does it get more urgency to get him out there? Just because of kind of where they are at the position. But if anything, it should hover. It should let everybody on the staff know we can't be this thin. We have to correct that going forward. Like you're talking about a couple of injuries and you're super thin. Like 2 injuries shouldn't decimate a unit.
Well, and I mean, what do you do at slot behind Squirrel White if he gets banged up in any way?
Nimrod.
I mean, Nimrod goes there, and then you're playing Ramel Keaton, Caleb Webb, Nimrod, and if anybody else gets hurt, you're playing Nathan Laycock, who's played 3 or 4 snaps this year. I mean,
I think they played Jancic.
They might play Jancic there, but my point is that the loss of Thornton is important because outside, Rob, he showed that he was more comfortable there, but he was the one guy who knew the slot position and had slot experience more so than Nimrod has. So that's where the loss is it's the quality body that Austin's mentioned at both spots, one as a starting outside guy and then as an inside guy as the backup.
Oh yeah, I can remember both of you guys talking about wide receiver depth back in fall camp, and at the time that won't happen. That won't happen. And now here you are, and it's exactly. I don't want to say anybody could have predicted it, but it's not that far fetched that you have a couple of injuries, in this league in November, and now here you are, and you've got a true freshman that's a heartbeat away, and like you said, I guess he's been on the field 5 or 6 snaps this year, and none of those in any kind of a meaningful situation, and you're going against what I would say is probably pretty clearly hands down the best secondary in the SEC this week. I mean, it's less than ideal.
Yeah, here would be my question too to anybody who wants to jump in here. Did you take a look at Dylan Sampson some in the slot? But because I mean, he's not getting a ton of carries. What did he get? 5 touches on Saturday, something like that. I mean, he's not. I mean, he had the great fourth quarter at Kentucky, but he's been kind of your third guy, and you've got a little bit of depth at the running back position. Look, he would run different routes. He can't run the over route like Squirrel runs and some different things like that. But do you look at trying to steal some snaps here and there with him at the slot position moving forward.
AP, of this short of a turnaround, I would say no. I mean, you'd likely to see D. Williams because he's at least been at the position for 5-6 weeks. I see what Brent's saying, but maybe like going to the bowl game if you're still in the situation. But with this short of a turnaround, I would say probably not. You more likely see D. Williams, right?
I don't know. I think that they're just going to, kind of hope and pray that, nobody gets injured and they don't have to even go down that route. I mean, the first couple of years they rolled with 3, maybe 3.5 guys total, as is. Now this year they've had to expand a little bit with that because of injuries and such. But I just think it goes back to, you look at the whole offensive side of the ball minus running back, and you can see deficiencies, depth at wide receiver, depth at tight end. Now they've stayed healthy at tight end. Jacob Warren has stayed healthy his senior year, which is great for that kid because he's had some nicks and bruises through his career. Callan Castles has been healthy, so they've not had to really go to the well with a younger guy like Ethan Davis, who they like a lot. But they're still super thin there. And then at offensive line, now they've taken 1 million offensive linemen, but I mean, how many of them actually do they have faith in to throw out there? I would tell you not many, because I mean, there they were 4 and 5 minutes to go Saturday, down 30 points, and yet they had everybody in. The only reason Addison Nichols came in was because Ollie Lane went down. Like, I just, some of the substituting when you're down 30 makes, lack thereof substituting makes no sense to me. But to me, there's a real, I think a glaring need on the offensive side of the ball for either more depth or more quality players.
I want to ask you guys some questions that we've been getting a lot on the board the last couple of days. But before that, a quick word from our friends and presenting sponsor of the Volquest podcast, that is Exterior Home Solutions.
Life happens, and damage to your home can be extremely stressful. That's why it's important to find someone who offers efficient, quality work with financing options. Exterior Home Solutions, they value not only family, but community. And they're who I call when life happens, and you should too.
A big thanks, as always, to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. Again, that phone number for a free estimate, 865-524-5888. All right, guys, a lot of questions we've been getting on the board since Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, on into Tuesday, has been, all right, with the SEC East off the table, kind of what are you playing for? We talked about this a little bit on the Rocky Top Rewind, Brent. Pride, better bowl game, NFL tape, all that type of stuff. I mean, those are the givens. What would you say, Brent, to the people saying, well, might as well for sure now make the move and go to Nico, make the move and play some young guys. You're seeing these young receivers playing. You're seeing these young linebackers, defensive linemen playing, a little bit of Ricky Gibson in the back end. So you're seeing a lot of youth kind of sprinkled in there now, out of necessity. But for a Nico to get some reps towards next year, what do you say to that crowd now with 2 games left, Georgia coming to town and then Vanderbilt?
Well, I think with the Georgia game, where you're at right now, you line up and you play with your best 11. You go play. You're playing the best team in the country at home. You got to do everything you can to make that a 60-minute fight. Now, if the game gets out of hand, gets away from you, then I think it's a different story. I think you could make the case, and Austin just did a second ago, but before the break, that your substitution pattern when you're down, 3 or 4 scores in the fourth quarter is kind of a head scratcher, right? So I think you can look at it and say, hey, if the opportunity is there, then certainly get those guys in. When you get into the Vanderbilt game, you're maybe having a different conversation. The answer to this might be different a week from now. I don't think you just suddenly say, hey, the number 1 team in the country is coming. Let's work in a bunch of young players who haven't played all year long into the second or third series of the football game against them. I don't see the win in doing that this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that as well. I mean, Georgia's a really good football team. I don't care if you're playing them at home or away. I don't think it would be smart to say, all right, well, Nico, you go get the 3rd series or the 5th series or whatever the case is. Vanderbilt, I agree with you. I think can be a different situation. But Austin, it's that precedent, right? Do you want to set that precedent saying, okay, well, if going to the SEC title game or the college football playoffs off the table, let's just go this complete youth movement? Because there were so many years, and I know it's a different time now. You got a new head coach, you're successful. So many years you were fighting for bowl eligibility around this time of the year. Do you want that to say, like, okay, well, when those things are off the table, you just want to go ahead and say, all right, thanks for your service, move aside, these young guys get in? Kind of what's that line you balance, I guess, is my question.
Well, I think more than anything, don't think anybody's saying, you know, I mean, I get a few fans maybe saying, you know, bench Joe, play Nico. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, you know, is time and place in the game. Like if Tennessee's, you know, playing Georgia Saturday and Georgia's up 3 or 4 scores in the fourth quarter, you should play a bunch of young guys because you need to see what they have and let them play. That's why I like Saturday. Like I thought it would have been beneficial for Nico, Addison Nichols, Ethan Davis, some of those younger guys to play the last 5-6 minutes of the game when you're down, you know, 30 points, because that's road snaps. And I mean, it's not a great environment, but it's okay, right? I mean, like, you know, it would have been good and beneficial for those players to, you know, see a road, you know, game and be on the field before next year when they have to go, you know, to Norman, Oklahoma early in the year. I mean, I just think ultimately that, you know, there is a fine line to walk. But at the same time, I think you've got to start to, you know, work some of these younger guys in here, especially knowing that, you know, this team has a shelf life of 3 more games. And, you know, you need to kind of figure out what you have in some of these younger guys because the portal opens here soon. Some of those guys may look to leave. You may want to keep them or vice versa. You know, and you also need to know what you need to go and address in the transfer portal.
Rob, when you look at the Missouri game, I think a lot of people were frustrated at times with the play calling, kind of going back to that game. Tennessee rushed for a season low. Tennessee's rush attempts were at a season low as well. Do you think that first drive, that first quarter, maybe got Josh Heupel out of the rhythm of offensive play calling, he and Joey Halsley? Because, of course, you ran 3 plays in that first quarter. It's easy to sit there and kind of get antsy. Tennessee just abandoned the run, I felt like, way too early.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make that argument, but also, you know, I just wonder how frustrated they were by the lack of success. I mean, I'm not inside either of their heads, but I mean, you know, golly, I mean, the longest run of the day came in the second quarter, 14 yards, and it wasn't like, you know, I didn't feel like the backs were missing holes or missing creases. And I totally, you know, get where some people could say, you know, Jalen Wright had 7 carries in that game. What is that? I didn't see a lot of positive reinforcement there for the ground game. I mean, anytime you have those, you know, that kind of number at the end of the game and in your rushing totals, you know, that criticism is going to be there, and especially when that's been your bread and butter. But golly, I just didn't see a lot of reason or a lot of evidence for why you want to keep banging your head against the wall. And Milton was not bad, you know, at all. 22 of 34. And he was actually a little more efficient than that until, you know, it got into the, you know, where it was pass every down. So, you know, I wouldn't just go overboard with the criticism on the runs, because, you know, I just didn't see a lot of reason to be hopeful. But, you know, 23 attempts, I think, is what they finished with. That is pretty low, but probably, you know, the fourth quarter that wasn't really on the table.
Well, down and distance took you out of that a little bit too. I mean, what you have 2 or 3 holding penalties, so suddenly now you're at, you know, 1st and 20 or 2nd and 20, changes a little bit of that. So I mean, I think that when you get back to the end and you look at it, I mean, the game wasn't as far away from you as you thought it would be. But man, for me, it's that opening drive of the second half is the one.
Thank you, Hubbard.
I just keep coming back to that one. When you talk about the game and as bad as you were and as bad as you know, just crap the bed, for lack of a better phrase, and that's not a good one to say, at the end of the first half to blow the opportunity to score points and to give up, just to gift 3 points to them. You still had a chance to start the second half, and that was the deadest, most disjointed start to a second half offensively that I can remember Tennessee having. That was just nothing about that felt good when they came down the steps out of the locker room. Nothing about that thing felt right to start the second half.
You're telling me the option to the short side of the field was not the right call?
I didn't like it, AP. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I also didn't like the 85-mile-an-hour fastball on the 3-yard pitch. I didn't like anything about that scenario and about that setup there.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad. I mean, to me, I said, you know, at halftime, I said this, you know, how hype comes out of the, you know, second half will be pivotal, and, you know, it was a bad first play call, and then, you know, just compounded from there.
I'm a little surprised too that they haven't thrown a few more, and I know they haven't gotten a lot of pass interference penalties in their favor. I am a little surprised they haven't thrown kind of a couple more jump balls up to see what would happen. Because you look at it, White made just a heck of a catch against South Carolina. He made another heck of a catch against Alabama. Dante Thornton makes a heck of a catch. I mean, they've won a bunch of 50-50 balls, or a good number of them. I'm surprised they haven't thrown more 50-50 balls. Particularly when the run game's just kind of stale and it's not going anywhere. Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't thrown one up to see if they get one. They took a shot in the second half and got the pass interference penalty because the guy just tackled Squirrel White there. I'm surprised they haven't taken a few more shots that way, even though guys wouldn't be 10 yards behind somebody wide open.
Yeah, I agree. Again, you laid out some situations of guys have won one-on-one battles. One against Florida that I thought was really good was Dante Thornton, down the seam. I thought that was another really good one. I'm surprised again, and again, I'm not a coach. I think I know football. There's a lot that I don't know, but I'm sitting there watching that game, and what I've gone back and reviewed a little bit. You could see, Rob, the adjustments that were made defensively at Florida when you were just getting pushed around the second quarter. Come out the second half, you saw some adjustments made. I didn't see many adjustments, at least to my eye, being made in this football game. They didn't want Brady Cook to throw over their heads, allowing all the underneath stuff, did not get Schrader out of the backfield hardly at all. There was a lot of just kind of status quo defensively, and that was kind of mind-boggling to me in this football game.
Well, I would say that it got worse when in the second half, or at least, I thought, Missouri, the ground game certainly got more efficient. No, I would, I'm not a coach and I don't know what went on at halftime, but no, I didn't feel like anything, really changed for the better for Tennessee in the second half. And I know, Hubbard, me and you have both written about it and talked about it. And I don't know if this is so much an adjustment as it is just a reminder, hey, watch out for this. Brady Cook with his legs just killed him. How many? There were 3 of those third down runs. They were all deep in Tennessee territory. They were all third, and I think the shortest one was 3rd and 6. And he pops loose for double-digit runs 3 separate times, twice in the first half. And then was that late in the third or early in the fourth?
First quarter.
First play of the fourth quarter.
On the goal line? Okay. On the goal, when he popped, it's 3rd and 10. He gets loose for 25. I don't know if that's adjustment maybe too strong a word, but after the first one in the first quarter, gather. But hey, rush lanes. You got to keep an eye on. Those were some huge plays, huge.
Oh, they were ginormous. The first one prompted a 20-play, 10-minute drive, that completely got you out of any kind of hopes of an offensive rhythm in the first half. And then the one that you had and to start the fourth quarter, you got a chance right there at 22-7. You get to stop and force them to punt. You're thinking kind of the A&M type game. It's set up here. Maybe D can make a play, and hey, you get a little jump start of something that you need. The most puzzling thing about those runs to me was the fact that Tennessee wasn't blitzing. They weren't in man coverage where DBs had their backs turned to the quarterback running away from him, and he had they're in zone. But they were so deep with their linebackers in zone and so scattered out that they couldn't close and create a tackle there. Sometimes that happens in man coverage, but you don't see that happen very often in zone coverage. But boy, it seemed to show up quite a bit in those 3 opportunities. They may not have been in exact zone. It may have been a combination of some stuff, but there were a lot of guys facing the line of scrimmage when he took off running. They didn't have their backs turned to him, is what I'm trying to say. 3
sacks by Tennessee's defense, 5 tackles for loss in the first half, no sacks, 3 tackles for loss in the second half. Tennessee just wasn't making it a point to get back there and try to affect the passer. And it didn't banjo it, didn't spy it with a star player, a linebacker. Again, there was just a lot that did not happen in that football game from an execution standpoint and a play calling standpoint, in my opinion. All right, quickly as we end here the last couple of minutes, let's look at Georgia. We'll continue to dive in and learn more about Georgia as the week goes on, but Austin, Georgia, 10-0, 7-0. Obviously, Georgia's who they've been the last couple of years. I think the biggest credit I can give to Georgia, I've said this a couple of times already this week, compared to the last 2 years, they're just good. And I think that's a testament of recruiting class, and good development. Lost a lot of name power. So has a lot of teams in the SEC and college football. but they're just all around a really solid football program. I mean, look at the stats. They're number 2 to LSU offensively in just about everything but rushing, where they're 5th. They're on defense. They're number 1 in the conference and everything, but where they're number 2 in defending the run. This is a good ball club. Good at the line of scrimmage. Good at better at wide receiver this year than they were last year. And of course, you got Brock Bowers, who missed a couple games, came back, caught a touchdown last week, and of course, he's going to play against Tennessee this week.
Yeah, I mean, they are just getting better and better by the week, Eric. And I think that's the one thing you can say about Georgia and under Kirby Smart is they've routinely gotten better as the years went along, and Tennessee catches them right here near the end. Now, they do have the East wrapped up. They're coming off a bludgeoning of Ole Miss, and Tennessee's has gotten bludgeoned by Missouri, and they just beat Missouri. So how much does the human element as 18 to 20-year-olds kick in and go, we're not really, this ain't no big deal. It's kind of like we had Aaron Murray on The Nation Sunday night, and, Chris said, well, you go give us a prediction on your way out the door, and he said, well, yeah, 35-17 Georgia. And Chris goes, so you're not taking Tennessee? And he goes, oh, God, no. And that's how he said it. I mean, that, and that, I think that'll be the mentality of Georgia's team. Kirby will have to find a way to get them up. The one thing is it's an old SEC East rival game. I mean, they'll be up for the game, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that they'll be fully amped. So, can Tennessee's crowd, can Tennessee match enough of their intensity early, to kind of, hang with them? A Georgia team that, again, doesn't have necessarily the star power minus Bowers, but they've got a lot of really good football players that make a ton of plays.
But look at this, Rob. I mean, defensively alone, no Nolan Smith, no Jalen Carter, no Christopher Smith, no Keely Ringo. I mean, all 4 of those guys were drafted last year. None of those guys, and still on paper, and you watch what little bit we've seen from them so far this season. I mean, top to bottom, they're just good. And you mentioned the secondary, 2 safeties, super experienced, 2 cornerbacks who break up passes all the time, and a star player who is second in the conference in interceptions. Again, you're missing that NFL name power, but still just a really sound unit.
Yeah, I mean, and like AP said, I mean, the thing that jumps out to me is they're getting better and better. I mean, Ole Miss I know is not great defensively, but Georgia, if you watched them early in the year, saw what they did against South Carolina, you had a lot of questions probably about their offense. They're just coming. They threw for 300. They ran for 300 Saturday night in an SEC game. I mean, that's pretty serious. And they average 10 yards a play. I mean, they're coming in hot. I mean, I'm not saying that Tennessee can't pull an upset or it's impossible or anything like that. I mean, crazy stuff happens in college football, but man, they're on the right trajectory if you're Kirby Smart, because to me it looks like they're getting better as they get deeper into the year.
Well, the other thing too is I'm with you about Austin, and maybe this is a potential game where human nature kicks in. This is the same program that was convinced last year they were going 7-5. So Lord only knows what they've got, put up there and what the message will be this week about, how terrible they are. They've got no chance to win. I mean, Kirby Smart is a master motivator, and this team has college football playoff on their mind, and they know they can't slip up. I mean, I don't think Georgia's going to be napping. Will they be at the elite pitch that they were a year ago against Tennessee? I'm sure not, but I don't think they're going to be flat to be, Tennessee's going to have to play exceptional to win this football game. And I know you weren't saying that they weren't going to have to be, Austin, but I just have a hard time seeing Georgia come in with any kind of real letdown, given the kind of motivation that Kirby Smart's been able to pull the last couple of years with his team, who's been heavily favored against everybody they played.
I think Tennessee, I mean, if you play up to your standard and play, what you've seen at your best at points in times this season, of course it can be a football game, but to be there in the fourth quarter and to really have a chance in this thing, Austin, I feel like you just got to focus on what do you do best, Tennessee. Run the freaking football and stop the run, and then build off that. Tennessee will not have a chance, in my opinion, if you have a performance like you did in Missouri where you couldn't stop the run, where you couldn't run the football. You're going to have no chance against Georgia if that happens again. I mean, do what you do best, and then build off that, and then see what happens. I think that's obviously, I mean, that's not a rocket science there, but I think that's Tennessee's best path to having an opportunity to see what happens late in that football game.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to prove they can run it against Georgia. They didn't really do it a year ago. They didn't do it 2 years ago. Can they finally do it this year. I think it's more possible this year. Georgia's not got that heavy, ridiculous defensive tackle. They've got some really good football players, but they do not have Jalen Carter. And, I just think that interior guy that just shoves that guard to guard right into Joe's face, they're going to move the pocket some, but it's not near what it was a year ago where, Tennessee just got eat up in the middle in the trenches. And so I think that, Tennessee's got to be able to run the football, but again, they got to prove they can do it. And that's something they've not really done against Kirby Smart.
Yeah, well, the reality is if they do anything like they did against Missouri, I mean, they wouldn't have beaten anybody in the league the way they played against Missouri.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have won at Kentucky if they played like that. They wouldn't have beat Texas A&M at home if they played like that. I mean, they got to flush that one and get that one behind them and get back to some kind of semblance of an edge like we saw the start of the Alabama game. And then you just got to stay in it, right? I mean, you just got to stay in it and throw a haymaker and take a haymaker and just kind of, to borrow a boxing analogy, you just got to extend the rounds. You can't get knocked out early, which means don't do anything crazy from a play calling standpoint, right? Don't turn the football over. Don't give them, cheap stuff, and just kind of figure out a way to stay in it. That's what they've got to find a way to do, and they've got to have the crowd help them on Saturday. And I think getting out of gates in this game is going to be of vital importance for Tennessee.
It is Tennessee and Georgia. Dolly Parton is going to be in attendance. She made that note on Monday as well, so it's going to be a big one. CBS Kick, 3:30, and of course we'll have all the coverage right here at Volquest.com. We got Tennessee-Georgia football coverage, tons and tons and tons to get to this week. We've got Tennessee basketball coverage, and there's no better time right now than to join Volquest.com. If you are not a member, $1 for 1 month or 50% off your first year annual subscription. That is this week only right here at Volquest.com. No better time to come on and join our family. Great crossover season and a lot to be excited about if you are a Tennessee fan. For Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, Rob Lewis, I'm Eric Kane. As always, a big shout out and thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. 865-524-5888. And visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Appreciate you guys for joining us here on the Tuesday podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.